The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as the early morning crowd filtered into Downtown Fitness, a popular 24-hour gym in the heart of Seattle. Among them was Lieutenant Commander Rose Thompson, though none of the regular gym-goers knew her rank or occupation. To them, she was just another dedicated member who arrived precisely at 5 a.m. every morning, rain or shine. At 32 years old, Rose had earned her position as one of the few female Navy SEALs through years of rigorous training and unwavering determination. But today, she wasn't Lieutenant Commander Thompson. She was simply Rose, hoping to get in her regular workout before heading to the naval base. The gym was relatively empty at this hour, just how she liked it. The weight section was particularly quiet, with only a handful of regulars spread across the various stations. Rose headed straight for the squat rack, her favorite place to start her morning routine. She had just finished her warm-up sets when she noticed a new face in the mirror's reflection. A tall man, probably in his mid-30s, had been staring at her for the past few minutes. Rose was used to the occasional glance, being one of the few women in the weight section often drew attention, but something about his gaze made her uneasy. She continued with her workout, adding more plates to the bar for her working sets. "You're going to hurt yourself with all that weight," the man's voice carried across the gym floor, uninvited and unwelcome. Rose ignored him, focusing on her form as she descended into another perfect squat. The weight was well within her capabilities, something she had proven countless times during her military training. The man moved closer, his reflection growing larger in the mirror. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he said, his tone carrying an edge that made several nearby gym-goers look up from their workouts. "That's too heavy for a girl. You should stick to the machines." Rose racked the weight and turned around slowly, maintaining her composure. Years of military training had taught her to assess situations before reacting. "I appreciate your concern," she said calmly, "but I'm comfortable with this weight. I've been training for years." The man's face reddened, clearly not used to being dismissed. "Listen, sweetie, I'm trying to help you. You don't belong in this section of the gym. The cardio machines are over there." He gestured dismissively toward the other side of the gym. By now, a small crowd had begun to gather, pretending to be occupied with their phones or water bottles while watching the scene unfold. Rose noticed the gym staff member at the front desk reaching for the phone, likely preparing to call for backup if needed. "Sir," Rose's voice remained steady, though her patience was wearing thin, "I'm going to ask you once to please leave me alone and continue with your own workout. My routine is not your concern." Instead of backing off, the man stepped closer, invading her personal space. The air grew thick with tension as other gym members watched, unsure whether to intervene. Rose could smell the morning coffee on his breath as he towered over her, attempting to use his height to intimidate. "You people always think you know everything," he spat out, his words carrying a weight that made it clear he wasn't just talking about gym etiquette anymore. "I've been training longer than you've been alive, and I'm not about to let some woman come in here and dash." Rose cut him off by taking a single step forward, her movement precise and controlled. Despite being shorter, her presence suddenly filled the space between them. Her eyes locked onto his, and for the first time that morning, the man seemed to notice something different about her, a steadiness, a confidence that went beyond typical gym bravado. "Sir," she said one final time, her voice carrying the same tone she used when commanding her unit, "this is your last warning. Step back and walk away." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken authority. The story of what happened next would soon spread through the gym like wildfire, becoming the talk of Downtown Fitness for months to come. But at that moment, time seemed to stand still as the man made his fatal mistake, reaching out to grab Rose's arm. Time seemed to slow down as the man's hand clamped around Rose's arm. In that split second, 15 years of military training kicked in automatically. Before anyone could blink, Rose had executed a perfect defensive maneuver, breaking his grip with minimal force while simultaneously creating distance between them. The man stumbled backward, more from surprise than any actual force. His face contorted with shock and anger as he realized what had just happened. The small crowd of onlookers collectively held their breath, phones forgotten in their hands as they watched the scene unfold. "Don't you dare touch me again," Rose's voice carried across the now silent gym, steady and authoritative. The fluorescent lights cast sharp shadows across her face as she stood her ground, her posture relaxed but ready. Years of combat training had taught her that the best confrontations were the ones that ended quickly and without escalation. The gym manager, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen, was already speed-walking toward them, her key card jangling at her hip. She had been watching the situation develop on the security cameras and had already signaled her staff to call the police. But before she could reach them, the man made his second mistake of the morning. "You think you're tough," he snarled, his embarrassment turning to rage. He lunged forward, throwing a wild punch that would have intimidated most people. But Rose Thompson wasn't most people. With movements honed through countless hours of training, Rose simply stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him forward. In one fluid motion, she guided his attack downward, using his own force against him. The man found himself face down on the rubber gym floor, his arms secured behind him in a standard military hold that caused no pain but left him completely immobile. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Mrs. Chen had reached them, her voice filled with concern. She looked down at the man, who was now sputtering incoherently about pressing charges. "The police are on their way." Rose nodded calmly, maintaining the hold with practiced ease. "I'm fine, thank you. I'd like to press charges for assault." Her voice remained professional, showing no sign of the adrenaline that must have been coursing through her system. The other gym members had formed a wider circle now, many of them recording the aftermath on their phones. A young trainer who had witnessed the entire incident stepped forward. "I got it all on video," he offered, holding up his phone. He clearly attacked her first. The man on the floor continued to struggle, his face red with exertion and humiliation. "You don't know who I am," he threatened between breaths. "I'm going to sue this entire gym." Rose almost smiled at the irony of his threat. As a Navy SEAL, she had faced far more dangerous situations than an angry man in a gym. Still, she maintained her composure, keeping the hold secure but not harmful. Her training had taught her that true strength wasn't about domination, it was about control. 2 police officers arrived within minutes, their badges glinting under the gym lights. Officer Rodriguez, a veteran of the force, quickly assessed the situation. Her partner, Officer Thompson, no relation to Rose, began taking statements from witnesses. "Ma'am, you can release him now," Officer Rodriguez said, handcuffs ready. Rose smoothly transferred control to the officer, stepping back as they helped the man to his feet. His face was a mix of anger and dawning realization as the handcuffs clicked into place. As the officers began reading him his rights, Mrs. Chen approached Rose again. "I am so sorry this happened in our gym," she said, genuine concern in her voice. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and assault. His membership will be permanently revoked." Rose nodded appreciatively, her heart rate already returning to normal. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her with the familiar calm that followed any successful operation. She looked around at the gym, noting how many people were still watching, their faces a mix of awe and respect. Officer Thompson approached with his notepad. "Ma'am, we'll need your statement. Could you walk us through what happened?" As Rose began to explain, she could see the man being escorted out of the gym, still protesting but noticeably subdued. What happened next would change not just Rose's life, but the entire gym culture at Downtown Fitness. As she gave her statement, nobody realized that one of the gym members' videos was already uploading to social media, about to spark a conversation about harassment, self-defense, and respect that would reach far beyond the walls of this Seattle gym. By the time Rose finished her statement to the police, the video of the incident had already begun its viral journey across social media platforms. The young trainer who recorded it, Gene Park, had initially shared it on his fitness Instagram account with the caption, "Watch how this woman handled harassment at our gym this morning. #StopGymHarassment #WomenInWeights." Within hours, the video had been shared thousands of times. Comments flooded in from around the world, with many women sharing their own experiences of gym harassment. What made this video different was the calm, professional way Rose had handled the situation. No screaming, no drama, just pure skill and control. Rose hadn't planned on checking her phone until after her shift at the naval base, but it wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from friends and family poured in, many of them having recognized her in the viral video. Her sister had sent multiple texts, "OMG, you're trending. CNN wants to interview you. Mom's already called me 3 times." Back at Downtown Fitness, Mrs. Chen was dealing with a flood of new membership inquiries. Women especially were calling to ask about self-defense classes and whether that amazing woman would be teaching any. The gym's social media following had doubled since morning, with comments praising their quick response to the situation and their zero-tolerance policy. Rose sat in her office at the naval base, contemplating how to handle this unexpected attention. As a Navy SEAL, she was used to operating in the shadows, not the spotlight. Her commanding officer, Captain Richards, knocked on her door. "Quite a morning you've had, Lieutenant Commander," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "The brass upstairs is actually pleased with how this is playing out. They think it might help with recruitment." Rose raised an eyebrow. "Sir? The video shows exactly what we train for: controlled response, minimal force, perfect execution. Plus," he added with a slight smile, "it's good PR to show that our female SEALs can handle themselves just as well as anyone else." Throughout the day, various news outlets began picking up the story. The headlines ranged from "Navy SEAL shows perfect response to gym harassment" to "Woman's professional handling of gym bully goes viral." Comment sections were filled with discussions about gym culture, women in the military, and the importance of self-defense training. Downtown Fitness was experiencing its own wave of changes. Mrs. Chen had called an emergency staff meeting to discuss new anti-harassment policies and training procedures. Gene, the trainer who recorded the video, found himself fielding calls from other gyms wanting to implement similar policies. By evening, Rose's story had caught the attention of several women's advocacy groups. They saw in her response a perfect example of how to handle harassment, professionally, effectively, and without escalation. Several organizations reached out, hoping she would speak at their events about personal safety and empowerment. The man who had assaulted her, meanwhile, was facing serious consequences. After being released on bail, he discovered that the video had reached his workplace. His employer, a local tech company with a strong stance on diversity and inclusion, had placed him on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Local gyms began sharing their own policies and procedures for handling harassment, creating a citywide conversation about gym safety and inclusivity. Some announced new training programs for their staff, while others started offering free self-defense classes. Rose finally returned home that evening to find news vans parked outside her apartment building. As she slipped in through the back entrance, she couldn't help but reflect on how one morning at the gym had turned into something much bigger than herself. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from a young woman who had seen the video. "I've been afraid to use the weights at my gym because of similar harassment. Today, watching you stand up to that bully gave me courage. I did my first squat session, and while I was nervous, I kept thinking about how calmly you handled yourself. Thank you for showing us what strength really looks like." The message struck a chord with Rose. Throughout her military career, she had faced countless challenges and broken numerous barriers. But sometimes the biggest impacts came from the smallest moments, like standing up to a bully at the gym. As she settled onto her couch, another message came through. This one was from Mrs. Chen. Our members keep asking if you'll consider teaching a self-defense class. I know you have your military duties, but would you be interested in running a weekend workshop? We've had over 200 inquiries since this morning. Rose smiled, realizing that perhaps this viral moment could be transformed into something even more meaningful. She began drafting a response, already formulating plans for how to structure a class that would teach not just physical techniques, but also the mental strength and composure that had served her so well that morning. What started as a confrontation at the gym was evolving into a movement, inspiring conversations about respect, empowerment, and standing up for oneself. And this was just the beginning. The following weekend, downtown fitness was packed to capacity. Rose stood at the front of the gym's largest studio space, facing a diverse group of women who had signed up for her first self-defense workshop. After careful consideration and discussions with her commanding officer, she had decided to use her unexpected platform to make a real difference. Self-defense isn't about aggression, Rose began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. It's about awareness, confidence, and knowing how to de-escalate situations before they become physical. The women listened intently, many of them recording her words on their phones or taking notes. Among the participants was a teenage girl who had come with her mother. Both had seen the viral video, and the mother had driven 3 hours just to attend this workshop. The daughter, a high school athlete who often trained alone, had faced similar intimidation at her local gym. As Rose demonstrated basic defensive stances and escape techniques, she shared principles that went beyond physical movements. Your first line of defense is your presence, she explained. Confidence isn't about being confrontational, it's about knowing your worth and your boundaries. Meanwhile, the video of the gym incident had sparked a nationwide conversation. News channels were running special segments on gym harassment and women's safety. Rose had declined most interview requests, but agreed to a few that focused on the broader issues rather than sensationalizing the incident. The man who had assaulted her, now identified as a former college athlete, had released a public apology through his lawyer. His statement acknowledged his behavior's impact on the wider community and expressed remorse for perpetuating toxic gym culture. Some criticized it as damage control, while others saw it as a sign of genuine reflection. Back at the workshop, Rose was teaching a technique she had used that morning at the gym. Notice how I'm not using strength against strength, she demonstrated with a volunteer. It's about redirecting energy and maintaining your composure. The movement was smooth, efficient, and surprisingly simple once broken down. Mrs. Chen watched from the back of the room, amazed at how her gym had transformed in just a week. The incident had led to positive changes she hadn't anticipated. Members were more considerate of each other, experienced lifters were offering friendly advice to newcomers, and the atmosphere had become notably more inclusive. During a break, Rose chatted with some participants. A woman in her 50s shared how she had always stuck to cardio machines, afraid to venture into the weight section. Watching your video made me realize I had been limiting myself out of fear, she said. Yesterday, I did my first deadlift. The trainer you mentioned in the video, Jean, helped me with my form. Jean had indeed become an unexpected ally in transforming the gym's culture. His social media following had grown exponentially, and he was using his platform to promote respectful gym behavior and inclusive fitness. He had started a series called Gym Etiquette 101 that was gaining traction online. As the workshop continued, Rose noticed something remarkable. The women weren't just learning self-defense moves, they were forming connections, sharing stories, and building a supportive community. Some exchanged phone numbers, planning to become workout partners. Others discussed starting similar initiatives at their local gyms. One participant, a corporate trainer, approached Rose during lunch break. "What happened to you at the gym? It's not just a gym issue," she said. "We face similar intimidation in workplaces, on public transport, everywhere. Would you consider bringing this workshop to other venues?" The question made Rose pause. Her viral moment had opened doors she hadn't expected, creating opportunities to make a broader impact. Captain Richards had been right, this was about more than just good PR for the Navy. It was about using her skills and experience to empower others. After the workshop, Rose sat in Mrs. Chen's office, reviewing the day's success. The gym owner had already received requests to host more sessions, and several corporate organizations had reached out about private workshops for their employees. "You've started something important here," Mrs. Chen said, sliding a folder across her desk. "These are letters from members who couldn't attend today. They all share similar stories, about feeling intimidated, about wanting to be stronger, about needing to know they can defend themselves." Rose opened the folder, reading testimonials that touched her heart. One particularly moving letter came from a young woman who wrote about how the viral video had given her the courage to report harassment at her own gym. The incident had led to policy changes that made the space safer for everyone. As evening approached, Rose packed up her gear, reflecting on how a single morning had cascaded into such significant change. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Richards. "The Navy's Public Affairs Office is interested in developing a broader self-defense program based on your workshop. They think it could help bridge the gap between military and civilian communities." Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the gym's parking lot. A group of workshop participants were still chatting by their cars, exchanging social media handles and making plans to meet for workouts. Rose watched them, realizing that the real power of what had happened wasn't in the viral video or the perfect takedown, it was in the connections and confidence being built in its wake. As she drove home, Rose began planning the next workshop. The incident that had thrust her into the spotlight was transforming into a movement, one that went beyond self-defense or gym etiquette. It was about creating spaces where everyone felt safe and empowered, about turning negative experiences into opportunities for growth and community building. The story was far from over, but its impact was already rippling out in ways nobody could have predicted that early morning at Downtown Fitness. 1 month after the incident, Downtown Fitness had become a symbol of positive change in the fitness community. Rose's story had inspired a movement that extended far beyond Seattle's city limits. The gym's transformation was featured in several fitness magazines, with reporters noting how a moment of confrontation had sparked a revolution in gym culture. Rose sat in her car outside the naval base, reviewing the latest email from a national women's fitness organization. They wanted to partner with her to develop a standardized safety and empowerment program for gyms across the country. The proposal included everything from staff training to member workshops, all based on the principles she had been teaching. "Lieutenant Commander," a voice called as she stepped out of her car. It was Captain Richards, holding a tablet. "Have you seen this?" He showed her a video from a gym in Miami. A female trainer was demonstrating the same de-escalation techniques Rose had taught in her workshop, crediting her as the inspiration. Inside the base, Rose's fellow SEALs had taken to calling her the Gym Whisperer, a nickname she accepted with good-natured eye rolls. But they all understood the significance of what she had accomplished. Her actions had shown the public a different side of military training, one focused on discipline, control, and protecting others. Back at Downtown Fitness, Mrs. Chen had implemented what she called the Thompson Protocol, a comprehensive anti-harassment policy that was being adopted by gyms nationwide. The protocol emphasized prevention through education, clear reporting procedures, and staff training in conflict resolution. Jean, the trainer who recorded the original video, had become an unexpected advocate for gym safety. His social media following had grown to over 500,000, and he used his platform to share success stories from gyms implementing the new protocols. "It's not just about preventing harassment," he explained in a recent post. "It's about creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to reach their fitness goals." The teenage girl who had attended Rose's first workshop with her mother had started a fitness club at her high school. The club focused not just on exercise, but on building confidence and supporting each other. She regularly shared updates with Rose through Mrs. Chen, proud photos of girls spotting each other on weights and practicing defensive techniques. One evening, as Rose finished teaching her now weekly workshop at Downtown Fitness, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was Officer Rodriguez, who had responded to the incident that morning. She wasn't in uniform this time. "My daughter saw the video," Rodriguez explained, introducing a shy 12-year-old girl. "She begged me to bring her to one of your classes. I think what you're doing here is exactly what our community needs." The impact of the incident had reached the legal system as well. The man who had assaulted Rose had been ordered to attend anger management classes as part of his plea deal. Surprisingly, he had become an advocate for change himself, speaking at men's groups about toxic behavior and the importance of respecting boundaries. Rose's phone buzzed with a notification. The military's public affairs office had approved her proposal for a broader community outreach program. Starting next month, she would be training other service members to lead similar workshops in their communities, creating a network of qualified instructors across the country. Mrs. Chen had transformed the gym's largest studio into what she called the empowerment zone. The space hosted not just Rose's workshops, but also meditation classes, group discussions, and training sessions for other gym staff members. The walls were decorated with inspiring quotes and photos from successful workshops. During one session, a woman shared how the ripple effects had reached her workplace. "I used your techniques in a meeting last week," she told Rose. "Not the physical ones, but the presence and confidence you taught us about. For the first time, I felt truly heard in that boardroom." The corporate world had indeed taken notice. Several major companies had reached out about implementing similar training in their wellness programs. Rose found herself consulting with HR departments, helping them develop protocols for creating safer, more inclusive workplace environments. One rainy evening, as Rose finished up paperwork in her office at the base, she received an unexpected email. It was from a military academy, asking if she would speak at their graduation ceremony. The subject they wanted her to address wasn't combat techniques or military strategy, it was about leadership, discipline, and using one's training to create positive change in civilian life. The email included a quote from one of their female cadets: "Lieutenant Commander Thompson showed us that true strength isn't about domination or intimidation. It's about using our skills to lift others up and create spaces where everyone can thrive." As Rose drove home that evening, she passed Downtown Fitness. The parking lot was full, another workshop was in session, this one led by Jean and other trainers she had certified. Through the windows, she could see people of all ages and backgrounds practicing together, supporting each other's growth. Her phone lit up with a message from Mrs. Chen, sharing a new statistic: gym membership among women had increased by 200% since implementing the Thompson Protocol. More importantly, retention rates were at an all-time high. People weren't just joining, they were staying, building community, and thriving. The story had evolved far beyond that morning's confrontation. It had become a testament to how one person's response to adversity could spark lasting change. As Rose parked outside her apartment, she smiled, thinking about all the lives touched by what had started as a simple morning workout. 6 months after the incident, Rose stood before a packed auditorium at a national fitness industry conference. The spotlight felt different from the fluorescent lights of Downtown Fitness, but her message remained the same. Gym owners, trainers, and fitness professionals from across the country had gathered to learn about the transformation that had started in Seattle. Safety and respect aren't just buzzwords, Rose addressed the crowd, her voice steady and clear. They're the foundation of any successful fitness community. The audience, many of whom had traveled thousands of miles to be there, listened intently as she shared how one incident had catalyzed a nationwide movement. In the front row sat Mrs. Chen, who had been invited to speak about the successful implementation of the Thompson Protocol. Her gym had become a case study in positive culture change, with fitness chains across the country seeking to replicate her results. Downtown Fitness now had a waiting list for memberships, something unheard of in its 20-year history. During the break, a group of gym owners from Texas approached Rose. They had implemented her program 3 months ago and were seeing remarkable results. "Our female membership has doubled," one owner shared, "but what's more impressive is how the overall atmosphere has changed. Members look out for each other now." Back in Seattle, downtown fitness had undergone a complete transformation. The weight area, once an intimidating space for many, now featured signs explaining gym etiquette and promoting mutual respect. Regular members had taken it upon themselves to welcome newcomers, creating an environment where questions were encouraged and support was freely given. Jin's social media influence had grown beyond fitness. He had started a YouTube channel dedicated to gym culture reform, featuring success stories from gyms nationwide. His latest video series, Transformation Stories, highlighted how different facilities had successfully implemented the Thompson Protocol. One evening, after finishing a workshop, Rose received news that would take her initiative to the next level. The state legislature was considering a bill that would require all gyms to implement comprehensive anti-harassment policies and staff training programs. They wanted her to testify about her experience and the impact of her program. "This isn't just about one incident anymore," her commanding officer remarked when she shared the news. "You're changing how people think about personal safety and community responsibility." The Navy had fully embraced her program, incorporating elements of it into their own training protocols. The teenage girl from Rose's first workshop had recently been featured in her local newspaper. She had expanded her high school fitness club into a district-wide program, with teams of students teaching peer-led workshops on confidence building and personal safety. "It all started with Lieutenant Commander Thompson showing us that strength comes in many forms," she told the reporter. One rainy afternoon, Rose visited a small gym in a neighboring town that had recently adopted her program. As she walked in, she noticed something that made her smile: a diverse group of people working out together, spotting each other on weights, sharing equipment, and maintaining an atmosphere of mutual respect. The gym's owner, a former powerlifter, approached her with tears in his eyes. "I've been in the fitness industry for 30 years, he said, "and I've never seen anything like this. We're not just changing bodies here, we're changing minds and hearts." The corporate world had taken notice too. Major companies were implementing modified versions of the Thompson Protocol in their workplace wellness programs. Human resource departments reported decreased incidents of harassment and improved employee satisfaction. Rose found herself conducting workshops not just in gyms, but in office buildings and corporate retreats. Mrs. Chen had expanded her initiative beyond downtown fitness. She now consulted with other gym owners, helping them create inclusive spaces that welcomed everyone. "The Thompson Protocol isn't just a set of rules," she would explain. "It's a commitment to treating everyone with dignity and respect." The man who had assaulted Rose that morning had completed his anger management program and, surprisingly, become an advocate for change. He spoke at men's groups about toxic behavior and the importance of respecting boundaries. His story of transformation added another layer to the narrative, showing that change was possible for everyone. One day, Rose received a letter from a women's prison. The inmates had seen her story and wanted to implement a similar program in their facility's gym. "Your message about strength through respect resonates deeply here," the letter read. "We want to create a space where we can rebuild ourselves physically and mentally." The impact continued to ripple outward in unexpected ways. School districts began incorporating elements of the Thompson Protocol into their physical education programs. Community centers adopted the principles for their youth programs. Senior centers implemented modified versions to create safe exercise spaces for older adults. As Rose prepared for another workshop, she reflected on how far things had come. The incident that could have been just another viral video had instead sparked a movement that was changing lives across the country. The principles she had learned as a Navy SEAL, discipline, respect, and community, were being applied in ways she never imagined. Her phone buzzed with a message from a gym owner in Australia who had implemented her program. Attached was a photo of a diverse group of women and men training together, with the caption, "The Thompson Effect has reached down under." The global fitness community was embracing the change, proving that the need for respect and safety transcended borders. As she walked into the gym that evening, Rose noticed something that hadn't been there before, a wall of photos showing transformations of a different kind. Not before and after body shots, but stories of people who had found confidence, community, and strength through the program. Each picture told a story of personal growth and empowerment. 1 year after the incident, Rose stood in front of a mirror at Downtown Fitness, preparing for a special anniversary event. The gym had organized a celebration to mark the incredible journey that had begun with one confrontation and evolved into a nationwide movement for positive change. The gym floor was packed with people who had been touched by the Thompson Protocol. Among them was a group of women from different cities who had started their own fitness advocacy network. They called themselves the Changemakers, and their organization had already helped hundreds of gyms implement inclusive policies. "Remember when this was just the weight section?" Mrs. Chen said, gesturing around the transformed space. The area had been redesigned to create what they called community zones, spaces where members could work out while feeling supported and safe. The walls displayed inspiring quotes and success stories from members who had found their strength here. A documentary filmmaker had spent the past 3 months capturing the impact of Rose's program. Her cameras followed success stories across the country, from small-town gyms to major fitness chains, all implementing variations of the Thompson Protocol. The preview footage showed tearful testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by the new gym culture. During the anniversary celebration, Rose noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was the police officer who had responded to the incident that morning, Officer Rodriguez. She wasn't alone. She had brought a group of fellow officers who had started implementing elements of the Thompson Protocol in their department's fitness facility. "Your program has changed how we approach training," Officer Rodriguez explained. "It's not just about physical strength anymore. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to become their best selves." The police department had seen improved morale and better community relations since adopting the program. Gene, whose social media presence had grown exponentially, was live-streaming the event to his millions of followers. His channel had become a platform for sharing success stories and promoting positive gym culture worldwide. Gyms as far away as Singapore and Dubai were now following his guidelines for implementing the Thompson Protocol. The teenage girl from Rose's first workshop, now a high school senior, took the stage to share her story. Her district-wide program had grown into a state-level initiative, with schools across Washington implementing peer-led fitness and empowerment programs. She had recently been accepted to the Naval Academy, inspired by Rose's example of leadership and service. A group of corporate executives attended the celebration, eager to share how the Thompson Protocol had transformed their workplace wellness programs. One CEO spoke about how the principles had extended beyond their gym facilities to influence their entire company culture. "We've seen a 70% reduction in workplace harassment cases," she reported, "and employee satisfaction is at an all-time high." The man who had assaulted Rose that morning had sent a letter to be read at the event. In it, he spoke about his journey through anger management and therapy, and how the incident had forced him to confront his own biases and toxic behaviors. His letter ended with an announcement: he was starting a program to help other men recognize and change harmful patterns in their lives. During the celebration, Rose received news that would take her initiative to an international level. The International Olympic Committee had reached out about incorporating elements of the Thompson Protocol into their guidelines for training facilities worldwide. They saw it as a way to promote safety and inclusivity in sports at all levels. Mrs. Chen shared the latest statistics from Downtown Fitness. Not only had membership doubled, but the gym's retention rate was the highest in the industry. More importantly, their incident report log, once filled with complaints about harassment and intimidation, now primarily contained stories of members helping each other and building community. A university researcher presented findings from a study on the impact of the Thompson Protocol. The data showed significant improvements in member satisfaction, workout consistency, and overall mental health among gym members. What's most remarkable, she noted, is how these benefits extend beyond the gym into people's daily lives. Rose's fellow Navy SEALs had become ambassadors for the program, implementing it in military fitness facilities across the country. The principles of respect, discipline, and community that were central to military training found new expression in civilian gyms, bridging the gap between military and civilian fitness cultures. Late in the evening, as the celebration continued, Rose stepped outside for a moment of reflection. The parking lot where she had once faced intimidation was now full of cars belonging to people who had found strength in community. The sight brought tears to her eyes, not of sadness or anger, but of pride in how far they'd come. A young woman approached her, clutching a journal. She had driven 6 hours to attend the celebration and shared how the Thompson Protocol had helped her recover from an eating disorder. "The gym used to be a place of punishment for me," she explained. "Now it's where I find strength and acceptance." Inside, Mrs. Chen was announcing plans for the future. Downtown Fitness would become a training center for other gym owners and staff, teaching them how to implement the Thompson Protocol effectively. They had already received requests from facilities in 20 different countries. The anniversary celebration had drawn media attention from around the world. Reporters interviewed participants, capturing stories of transformation and hope. But what struck them most was the atmosphere in the gym, people of all backgrounds working out together, supporting each other, creating a community where everyone could thrive. As the evening wound down, Rose looked at the wall of photos that chronicled their journey. Each image told a story of change, not just in physical strength, but in confidence, respect, and community. What had started as a response to harassment had become a blueprint for positive change in fitness spaces worldwide. 18 months after the incident that changed everything, Rose stood at the podium of a United Nations conference on women's empowerment. The journey from that early morning at Downtown Fitness to this global stage seemed almost surreal, yet the principles remained the same: strength through respect, community through understanding. Change doesn't always start with grand gestures, Rose began her speech. Sometimes it starts with standing your ground in a quiet gym on an ordinary morning. The audience, which included delegates from over 50 countries, listened intently as she shared how a single incident had sparked a global movement. Back in Seattle, Downtown Fitness had become a pillar of the community in ways nobody could have predicted. The gym now hosted international training programs, teaching facility owners and staff from around the world how to implement the Thompson Protocol. Mrs. Chen had become a sought-after speaker on organizational culture change, sharing how their success could be replicated in any environment. Jin's social media impact had evolved into something extraordinary. His fitness channel now focused on stories of community building and cultural change in gyms worldwide. A recent video series featured transformation stories from places as diverse as rural India to urban Brazil, all implementing variations of the Thompson Protocol. The teenage girl who had attended Rose's first workshop was now preparing to enter the Naval Academy. Her high school initiative had grown into a national youth empowerment program, with chapters in schools across America. "Lieutenant Commander Thompson showed us that true strength lies in lifting others up," she told her graduating class. The corporate world had fully embraced the principles of the Thompson Protocol. Major companies reported improved workplace cultures, reduced harassment incidents, and increased employee satisfaction. Human resource departments used the program's principles in their training modules, extending beyond fitness spaces into general workplace behavior. One morning, Rose received an unexpected call. A major sports organization wanted to implement the Thompson Protocol in all their training facilities. "We've seen how it's transformed gym cultures," their representative explained. "We want to bring that same positive change to professional sports." Mrs. Chen had transformed Downtown Fitness into what she called a global learning center for inclusive fitness. The facility now featured a training academy where gym owners and staff from around the world came to learn how to create safe, welcoming spaces in their own communities. The documentary about the Thompson Protocol's impact had premiered at several film festivals, winning awards for its powerful portrayal of cultural change. The film followed success stories across continents, showing how one incident had inspired a global movement for respect and inclusion in fitness spaces. Rose's fellow Navy SEALs had become integral to the program's expansion. Their expertise in discipline, leadership, and community building helped adapt the protocol for different cultures and contexts. The military's involvement added credibility while demonstrating how civilian and military approaches to fitness could complement each other. The man who had assaulted Rose that morning had completed his own remarkable journey. His program helping others recognize and change toxic behaviors had expanded to multiple cities. He often spoke about how his worst moment had led to his greatest transformation, though he never sought credit or attention for his change. During a return visit to Downtown Fitness, Rose noticed something remarkable. The gym floor, once divided by invisible barriers of gender and intimidation, now flowed with natural cooperation. Experienced members mentored newcomers, people from all backgrounds spotted each other on weights, and the atmosphere hummed with positive energy. A group of international researchers had conducted a comprehensive study of the Thompson Protocol's impact. Their findings showed significant improvements not just in gym participation and retention, but in overall community health and social cohesion. The protocol was being studied as a model for cultural change in other public spaces. The United Nations Conference marked a new chapter in the story. Representatives from different countries shared how they had adapted the protocol to fit their cultural contexts while maintaining its core principles of respect and empowerment. The program had proven that some values truly were universal. As Rose concluded her speech, she shared a recent story that captured the essence of their achievement. A young girl in a small town had started training at her local gym, inspired by the changes she'd seen online. When asked why she chose that particular gym, she replied, "Because here, everyone helps everyone else become stronger." The implementation of the Thompson Protocol had led to unexpected positive changes in communities worldwide. Crime rates had dropped in areas around participating gyms. Mental health professionals reported improved outcomes when their clients joined these supportive fitness communities. Schools with the program showed better student engagement and reduced bullying incidents. Mrs. Chen's vision for Downtown Fitness had expanded beyond anything they had imagined. The facility now included research spaces, training centers, and community outreach programs. It had become a model for how fitness centers could serve as catalysts for positive social change. As Rose left the UN conference, her phone buzzed with a message from the teenage girl who was now entering the Naval Academy. She had started a mentorship program matching female officers with young women interested in military service. "You showed me that one person standing up can help others find their strength," the message read. "I'm paying it forward." Looking back at how far they'd come, Rose realized that the story had never really been about that one morning at the gym. It was about what happened when people chose to transform negative experiences into opportunities for positive change. It was about the power of community, respect, and the ripple effect of standing up for what's right. The journey that began with a confrontation at Downtown Fitness had evolved into a global movement for positive change. But perhaps more importantly, it had shown that real strength wasn't about domination or intimidation. It was about creating spaces where everyone could grow stronger together.